about ready to start our build, and I want to give you a layout of my building area. I use a magnetic building system. In my opinion, it's the only way to go. And here's my building board right here. You can see I'm waxing it right now because I always, before I start a new build, I always wax the board. Make sure it's nice and slick and clean and ready to go. These are my hold downs that I 3D print on my 3D printer over here. So I can print gazillions of them, and I use gazillions of them. I also have airfield model system. More magnets here. You can never have too many magnets. And again, more 3D printed hold downs. And I use them all. And the more you have, the more you find that you'll need, because you will find ways to use them. The STL files, if you have a 3D printer, you can get the STL files for all of these on Thingiverse. And I'll include a link here when we get to that point. But this is definitely the way to build, is with these hold downs. My buddy Marco in Australia is the one who designed all of these, and he is a genius. So you'll like these. These are our glue choices. We'll be using a combination of cyanoacrylate glues. We'll use both a thin and a gap filling medium. And we'll use our aphatic resin choice will be Titebond 3, which is waterproof, and because it's a plane that's flying off the water, might as well be safe and use the waterproof glue. Not that we'll ever ditch it in the water, mind you, but just in case. I am a Titebond fan. Titebond 3, waterproof, and the cyanoacrylate's both thin and gap filling. That's our choices. Okay, we're going to go ahead and begin. We're going to start with step 1, which is the fuselage assembly. And we're just going to follow the directions. Here's all of our laser cut parts here. We'll pop those out and begin assembly. And I'll come back to you in just a minute and kind of show you where we are on things. As you can see, all of the parts are well labeled when they were laser cut. So that's a good thing. It's not just labeling on the side, but on the actual part. So in case they get separated from this, the part is labeled. And I think that's always helpful. So I spent some time kind of reading the manual a little bit, getting a better sense of how they're writing things and the direction they go. And some of the nomenclature is a little bit different. But I've got the one fuselage side laid out here on my building board. You can see how I'm using the hold downs to keep it flat to my building board. And we've done a couple laminations. The F2 needs to be laminated. So we've got one laminated kind of drying right there, curing a little bit. And we're going to build the top deck area here, the inside part that goes here first, and then we'll fit it in here. And I've got to do some sanding on the parts with the laser cut. I tend to want to sand the edges so the burn is gone. So we'll do that first. And then we'll go ahead and align these in here. Then this sets right inside here, and then we'll do the other side on top of that. So it's definitely, you want to be able to pay attention and, you know, kind of get a feel for how they write things and how the directions flow. It's a little bit different than some other kits I've built. So we'll come back here in a few minutes after I've had a chance to do the sanding and let that laminate cure, and we should be back in a few minutes. All right? One of the things that I like to use these magnet systems for is oftentimes you have to line up a part. So this piece is supposed to line up in here, and instead of just trying to fudge with it to get it in, you can set markers here. These are magnet 90-degree angles, and then you just kind of slide it right in there, and boom, it's lined up. Everything's right where it's supposed to be. Just a little hint for you guys, when you're sanding these formers and you got to get in all these tight little areas right here, I take a little piece of balsa or spruce and wrap it with sandpaper, and then you can just, and I do more than just, I do one side, two sides, so you can get right in there, sand it, and get rid of those burn marks from the laser cutter. Alright, you can do different shapes, different sizes. I have some dowels that are wrapped in sandpaper so you can do round corners. So it just makes it a little bit easier for you to get in there and do your thing. Okay guys, so step one is asking us to build the front end of the fuselage. So we've done that. You can see it's all as according to plans. Everything fit nicely. Everything lined up properly. Everything is slotted. So it's a little bit like putting a puzzle together, which is kind of nice. Alright, so the idea now is that this unit then fits down inside here. And if everything is done right, it should line right up. And by golly, right on the money. So you can see now that everything kind of fits right in all the slots like it's supposed to. And again, remember, you're not going to try and fit that in there yet, because when we get that other side up here coming from this side, we're going to put it up on the bottom and squeeze those together so they have an even positioning here. So we don't want to try and glue this down yet. Okay, so that's the first part here. Then we're going to add the ribs all the way up, the formers rather, all the way up here before we go and add the second side. So going together pretty good so far. Okay, I'm about 6 hours in, and I would have to say I'm probably a slow builder just because I'm pretty meticulous and like to have good clean glue joints and making sure all the glue's wiped up. And you can see I've got 1/2 of the fuse done. I just need to do a little bit of work right here at the tail end, which you can see I've just got the formers in, but it's late and we got to hit the fields in the morning for plowing at 6 a.m. so I'm going to call it a night here. But we have got some pretty good progress here. I'm used to putting together quarter scale planes, so that takes a lot more time. And this is really going together pretty quickly. Pretty pleased with it. So about 6 hours in and looking good. We should have this fuse wrapped up tomorrow night. It's not labeled properly here, but as you can see, this little part right here is going to hold the rare earth magnet. It's going to keep the battery hatch closed for you. There is no description of what that part number is, so after a little bit of digging and kind of scouring through the parts, it's obvious that this handwritten part, remember this kit is brand new, so we're still working out some of the kinks, but it's F3.1 and F3.2, so the rare earth magnet fits right inside that little circle on the notched part, and then that is going to end up going notching into this former right here. So it notches in both on the bottom and onto the former. So right into the side and there. And it's F3.1 and F3.2. F3.2 is going to go on the back like that. But I'm not putting that in there quite yet. Now also, let's see, step right here, F17. This is obviously where the floats are going to mount right here. So you have to get your, these are going to end up getting laminated. Now, these are definitely angled, so you got to make sure you have the right angle going in the right direction, okay? So when you go to assemble it, make sure that you're putting the angle at the right in the right direction, because this is going to slope down and, well, you know, taper towards the front. So you're going to make sure that that taper is there. Then we're going to put in our blind nuts here, which will hold in your float mounts to the fuse. Also, before you get too far along, you're going to want to start planning on your battery placement. Right here is where the battery hatch is going to go. Now this plane is set to fly with a 4S. Now these are 4S 3240Cs that I have in stock here that I fly with other airplanes. It's obvious that this 4S 3200 is not going to fit in here. So I'm going to have to make sure I change my battery, because this is not going to work. So I'm going to have to go with a different 4S for this. I got to get the dimensions, because it's going to slide in here and it's got to rest right in there. Definitely want to run 4S though, but we'll have to find out what battery is going to fit in there. Before you install F15 and F14, you want to make sure while you have access to them, you get a little bit of 5-minute epoxy and just set it on the edges here so it locks these in place. Make sure you don't get any in the threads though, obviously. So I'm going to turn the camera off and get those done before my epoxy cures. Okay, so you can see I've got the epoxy in place now. It'll cure and hold those lock wash or those blind nuts right in place. You want to make sure you don't get any epoxy down here to interfere with these tabs though. So just keep your epoxy up and away. Now those babies will never come out. We're now ready to move on to step 1.9. I have completed all of this. We're ready to put the second side of the fuselage together. First, however, we have to make sure we add the F02, F03, and F01 onto this. Now, I know I don't have to remind you guys, but you got to make sure you're building a right side and a left side. So you got to make sure that you turn it this way. Put your parts here so that when you go to put them on, you've got them on the correct side. I know nobody here has ever built 2 right wings or 2 left wings or anything crazy like that. But just as a reminder, make sure you're building a right side and a left side on this fuselage, okay? Okay, so I'm ready to get side 2 fixed to the fuselage. I've added F1, 2, and 3 to the underside of side 2. Now, it's just dry fit right now. I've not glued any of these, this whole first unit that we built is not glued to side 1 yet, because we wanted to make sure that all these tabs lined up and everything. As you can see, they do right here. So what we're going to do is we're going to use alphatic resin now, because super glue just dries too fast or cures too fast. So what we're going to do is we're going to white glue here, 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 and here. Let that cure, because this part of the fuse is parallel to each other. And as you can see, we're not going to draw this down yet, because we don't want to draw one side and not the other. We're going to draw them both together at the same time. So we're going to get these parallel parts glued on the formers right there. Let that cure overnight. And then we're going to take it off, turn it so it's bottom side down, and then we're going to draw in both the front, both sides at the same time, and all the way back. So both sides are drawn at the same time, not just one side. So that's what we'll do, and then we'll be back tomorrow to finish up the fuse. Okay, it is now set for a night of curing. If you got yourself some 3-2-1 blocks, then use those as weights to hold everything in place. Now, if you don't want to buy 3-2-1 blocks, you can do what I also have, is just some Ziploc bags filled with sand. You can use those for weights as well. But you can get these 3-2-1 blocks pretty cheap on Amazon. So if you have 3-2-1 blocks, use them. And if you don't have 3-2-1 blocks, get some, because you will never believe how many different uses you have for them. I decided before I join the back half that because former F14 has to be in place when you squeeze the front together, I'd go ahead and tackle this part first. So I basically got it clamped to hold the sides onto F1, and I'm also gluing in at the same time F14, which is one of the two float mounts. So we'll let that cure for a few hours, and then we'll come back a little bit later this evening and get the back side of things. And that will be the primary construction on the fuselage. We still have to do some work on it, but that'll be a good start. Okay, the next step was to glue the other side of the fuselage to the structure we'd already built. And you can see I set it up so that these magnet 90s would hold the fuse from twisting in any direction. And then because of this part of the fuse is lifted up, I didn't want the thing to tilt down while I was working on it. So we're using this hold down here to kind of keep everything in position. So my fuse can't move while I'm working on it. And the idea here was to draw the two sides together at the same time. So you create a fuse that's straight down the line. And as you can see, we've worked straight down the line here. A little bit of perspective problems here with the camera, but it's true down the middle there. And we should be in good shape. So the idea is to make this point line all the way up to that point right there. And we've got it right on the money. So I just need to get to the next phase here. So I'm going to take this out of the jig and we'll continue working on. I did have to do a little bit of kind of working things around here to get all these tabs lined up, because this one has to line up while that one's lining up, while these are lining up. So there's a little bit of working around here, but pretty tight in terms of the design of the pre-cut tabs. But a little bit of working down there, so you just got to be a little bit patient. My original plan was to use alphatic resin throughout there, but because of the way it kind of had to go together, you know, kind of holding it together as I went, I did end up using a mixture of thin CA and medium gap filling CA. Mostly thin down here, because these are all balsa to balsa, which makes the thin CA seep in, which is really good. And you can see I got a little bit stuck there, which is normal. But I didn't end up using the CA down here. But that should be fine. CA is just as good. Okay, we're running into our first little building issue, which we're going to have to overcome. And I'm probably going to make a recommendation that you kind of move some steps around a little bit. This next step is asking for us to take these 4mm by 4mm balsa and insert them through here, through here, through here in these pre-cut holes, as you can see right here. Now, that's not a bad idea, except that, boy, you got to be right on the money if you want this thing to go through there. So I'm already running into an issue where that's not going to fit, okay? So my recommendation would be to put these in those slots before you put the sides on. That way they're already in place. I think that's going to be a better way to approach this. So this one, you make sure you got a variety of sizes here too, so you want to make sure you use the right length to fit in the right spot. Now there's no direction as to which is which, so you just got to use your own common sense and know that that one goes there, the next longer one goes through here. So we're going to probably have to do a little bit of jerry-rigging to try and get this thing to slide through here. One of the things you also have is this, you got a straight piece of balsa and you're going to go through this curve, so I might have to end up soaking this balsa to get it through there. So again, my recommendation would be to move step 111. These actually go in pretty good. These are the side rails that go on your servo tray here, and that actually, those slide in pretty easy. It's this one right here, these side ones in step 111. I'm going to suggest that you move putting these in place to an earlier step so that you don't have to slide them through those. It's like threading a needle, and your thread better be the right width or you're in trouble. And that's what we're running into right now. So I'm going to do a little sanding, a little bit of opening up those holes in order to slide those in. And we obviously haven't hit such a monumental task or problem that it can't be overcome. But I think that's what I'm going to have to do in order to make this fit. So I should have done it earlier, but I'm following the directions, and that's normal in any build. You run into little issues as you go. All right, so we're going to go ahead and do that. We'll come back in a bit. So I ended up using a very fine point Dremel tool and was able to drill out the little openings there. You got to be very careful. This former right here is pretty delicate. It's got no support, so I kind of snapped that one and had to re-glue it. But it should be in good shape if you drill these out. Luckily, if you got the right tools, you can do it. It'd be a longer task if I didn't have a Dremel. But I was able, as you can see, to get it started in there. And hopefully we'll be able to show you it sliding in. So now it's going to slide right in there. And now it seems to be following the nice bend and form. I went ahead and picked the softer pieces of balsa in order to accommodate this curvature here. But it seems to be sliding in pretty good. Now you're obviously going to need to then glue it in place. I think typically I would use gap filling, because now that we've drilled that out, we've got a little bit of gap there. But I think it's so tight along here that if we use thin CA along here, we should be in good shape. Or you could put alphatic resin in each of those and then slide it through, but it's going to drag that resin with it as you go. So that's what we're going to end up doing. So we're going to do that on both sides. Hey guys, in retrospect, I don't think this is such a bad plan to go ahead and put these in afterwards. It's working out that they actually fit and slide in pretty easily, and they kind of follow that form here. So I stick with the plans, and hopefully you've already ignored me. But I would go ahead now and I'd stick to the plans on these right here. I think they're sliding in pretty darn good with just a little bit of working on those holes. So follow the steps. 111 can stay where 111 is, I think. I think you'll be in good shape. Okay, now we've got step 111 and 112 done with these balsa strips placed in there, and also along the servo tray here as well. It adds an amazing amount of structural integrity to this. It's very, it's pretty nice now. It's rigid. It's not, no twisting. So surprising amount of stability that just those simple balsa strips add. All right. Next step is we're going to be sheeting the top deck here of the fuse, and this is the piece of balsa that's going to sheet over there. Now, as you can see, it's not a profound curve there, but it is a curve, and we don't want to crack our balsa. So what we're going to end up doing is soaking this piece of balsa with Windex. The ammonia in the Windex will allow me to get a pretty big bend out of this, and it's a nice soft balsa. So with a good soaking of Windex, we should be able to wrap that right around there without cracking our balsa and get a good nice curve there. So as you can see, soaking that balsa in Windex gives you a nice ability to make complex curves, and in this case it also be a simple curve. You have to do a little fitting and sanding over on this side. Anytime you're sheeting, sandpaper is your friend. But you can see that is now sheeted on the top there. And we'll have to obviously let that balsa dry before we sand it. But we should be in good shape now. One of the things I've noticed in the Dancing Wings illustration book and instructions is that you got to pay attention to the pictures, really study them, because you'll see things popping in and out as if without any explanation. Like you see here, the push rod sleeves have been put in here, and then they're not here, and there's no explanation. Then you get up here to the sheeting, and you can see the push rod sleeves are in place, and then they're not there. So my suggestion is, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and put them in place, but I'm not going to lock them in. I may have access issues later that I want to make sure that I don't run into. So I'm going to put them in place, and they do cross. So let's see, that's going to be elevator crosses over and exits down there, and your no, I apologize, that's going to be rudder right there, and your elevator is going to come here and exit on the opposite side. So I'm going to put them in place, but I'm going to leave them loose. I'm not going to lock them in. Just like I said, I might have access issues, but you can see that they're there and then they're not there. And then you get way yonder out here on step 10, and they talk about putting in the actual push rods into the pre-existing sleeves with no other explanation anywhere of actually putting those sleeves in there. So for lack of any detailed instructions on that, I'm going to go ahead and put them in now, but not lock them in place. Okay, again, we're finding instructions not listing all the things you need to do here. So as I'm following this step right here, which is step 115, all of a sudden this former here appears, and you notice there's an open slot right here. And these strips here, balsa strips, are long enough to reach that, but there's been no mention of this anywhere in the instructions. But it suddenly appears in the picture, and you see it here as well. But prior to that, there's been no, actually you can see it right down there as well, but there's been no indication of it going in anywhere. And so you kind of have to infer what that is. Now F19 is right here, and F18 is right there. So F18, F19, I'm going, and there's F21. So what's the number missing? F20, right? So I'm going to make an assumption that that's F20. There's no mention of it anywhere. So we'll come over here, and I do have an F20, and that may or may not be the right piece to go in there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to knock it out of there, test fit it, and see if it works. But then I'm going to save this piece of this pattern here in case F20 shows up somewhere else, and I don't think it will, but I'll be able to trace that and cut that out if I need to. But again, pay attention to the pictures because things jump out at you, and maybe as they get into more production on this, they'll be able to see these kinds of issues, and I'll report to them what I'm finding here as well. But I believe that's F20, and I'm going to go ahead and put that in there, and then we'll see how it works. Okay, the last step in creating the fuselage is to create the battery hatch and also put in the wing tube. This is obviously how the tube will cross all the way through the fuse into the wings with the next step. But here's your battery hatch. It incorporates a front tab and rare earth magnets in the body and also on the hatch. So it will tab right in and snap into place. Okay guys, it looks like we've completed the fuselage at this point. Everything went together really well. All the tabs and slots in the laser cutting parts, everything fit together really well. There wasn't really a lot of fudging or anything like that. It's pretty tightly designed. I'm pretty pleased with that. Once we got the balsa stringers in place, the craft really has a lot of structural integrity. I mean, really pleased with it. There's no wiggle, no movement. It's tight, and I like that. I think it's going to help us when we get to the rest of the build, that this first stage is so well constructed. You take your time with your glue joints. Make sure really take your time. Don't rush through it. Don't think about, I got to get this done real fast. Just take your time, and patience and persistence and meticulousness pays off. Now, I speak to meticulousness because there are some things in the directions that are really kind of touch and go in terms of being able to, you got to pay attention to the different steps and really study the photographs, because there's things that need to be done that are not in the written directions but show up in the pictorial directions. So you really got to kind of think it through, take your time, don't rush. But it's looking good so far. We'll move on to the wings next, but this will be the end of the fuselage stage of our build video. So keep building, builders. You're going to enjoy this one.